Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, here in Silicon Valley at 13th Cloud Expo. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening if you're following this final, well, it's not the final, but it's the morning keynote anyway, of day 4 here in Silicon Valley at 13th Cloud Expo. We have got so much for you today that we're not going to take even a moment from the time of Microsoft for this keynote. So I am instead going to introduce with enormous pleasure the technical fellow and the director of Microsoft's developer platform, John. I have discovered you can say it as Shewchuk, but I'm thinking he's probably by now called Shewchuk or whatever. But I'm going to say John Shewchuk, who's coming up with Neil Hudson. Let's give it up and let's let them demo their hearts out. Oh, I can't speak.
Good morning. So I'm from Microsoft, and I thought what we would do is just really focus on talking about some of the great technologies that we've been putting together. So I actually have a pretty fun demo to start with. Neil's going to help me out here, so why don't we switch over to our first demo machine. Now, as you can see, what we've got here is a MacBook, and what I'm working on is my Android application, and this is a pretty interesting little Android application. Let's start it up here, and what we've got is a very simple Android app that can take a picture. And there's Neil. He's looking pretty good there this morning. Now, this Android app, really, if you think about it, it doesn't do much. It's a client application. It's running here on the device. What we'd really like to do is we'd like to connect our devices to services, because that's where the real magic starts to happen in these applications. Now, we've got this fantastic environment called Windows Azure, which we can use to connect to all kinds of different devices. And there's a lot of features in there, but we're just showing one right now, which is the Azure Mobile Services. And this is a key piece of technology that we can use to connect any kind of device up there. And as you can see, we've got a list of the different kinds of devices. We've got Windows Store, Windows Phone, iOS, Android. And what this does is it just makes it incredibly easy for a device developer to connect up to the cloud and start using services. So as you can see, what Neil is doing is he's scrolling down to the key piece of code that we need here, which is, and he's just copied that. That piece of code embodies everything you need, the app keys, the connectivity, in order to set up this connection between the device and the cloud. So let's connect up our Android device now to the Microsoft Windows Azure cloud, and let's see if we can put this together. So there's the first part. Now, what we're going to want to do, we've got this little app that can take a picture. What we'd really like to do is we'd like to do some pretty powerful things. Let's use a relational database, and let's use some cloud blob storage to store that picture and then the tags on it, and let's go put that up in the cloud. So, what we got, so he's working through that, and what we've got is a little piece of code here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go put this little piece of code up in the cloud, and let's see, right there. And we're going to add a new API to this, and we're going to script the upload operation. And we're going to just add this little piece of code, and what that piece of code does is when the request comes in, it's going to take the tags, put it into the relational database. It's going to open up a little spot in the cloud with a URL, and it's going to send that URL back down to the client, and we'll store that picture up inside there. Oh, not that function. We need that other function. There we go. So what do we think? We got it?
I think it feels pretty good.
All right, let's see if we can do this. Now, got a lot of moving pieces here. Let's see if we can make this all work together. And let's run it. So there's our app. Let's take the picture. Hey, everybody. Yeah, look. Oh, good. Didn't get me. And let's add a little tag to that. All right. And do the upload. And cross our fingers. Let's see if everything in our code is working. And we should be able to browse up there and take a look. Ah, there we go. So notice, really just a couple quick steps. We've now taken an Android app being built on a MacBook, connected it up to the Azure cloud. We've taken that data, we've put it into a relational database. Notice I didn't set up any servers. I didn't have to worry about scaling my database. We added a spot in the cloud for cloud storage. We put the picture in there. In fact, we've got the URL. Let's take that URL. Let's look at that URL and let's look at it inside of a browser. Oh, always tricky to connect these things. Let's see, grab that blob path. There you go. And let's look at that in the browser. And let's see if we got the picture up in the cloud. There you go. So that's really kind of a little bit of magic connecting together devices and services. So if you think about it, devices and services, whether you're in a startup, whether you're in the enterprise, there's going to be a lot of different kind of devices out in the world. You may have customers, you may have partners, you may have people in your neighborhood association, and you don't know what kind of devices they're going to be coming in on. They may come in on a Windows phone, they may come in on Android, they may come in on iOS. There's a lot of different browsers, and so as developers, as people managing those applications, we've got to be able to handle the situation where we can create applications and manage those applications across all of these different devices. Now, one of the things that you might have noticed in this is that when we wrote the little piece of code up in the cloud to handle that incoming request, we actually wrote it in JavaScript. Now, JavaScript's a pretty interesting language. People are using it in a lot of places. It's certainly become a big part of the client application world, but it's also become a big deal in the cloud. With things like Node.js, people are creating applications using this. And if you were to go to any Node.js tutorial site, you'd see a function that looks like this. And so let's just do something quickly. Let's just run this particular application. So here we are on Ubuntu. And what we'll do is we'll start it up. And since we're in a shared environment, we'll use a little sudo. We'll run that. You might want to put that in the background.
Yeah.
And then let's do a little curl operation to go ping that server, and let's see what we get back from our little Node.js server. Oh, yeah, look at that, an error. Now, this is the crazy part. We love JavaScript. JavaScript, again, kind of the x86 of the internet. It's everywhere. It's an awesome language for producing applications on the client. It's an awesome language for producing things in the cloud. But, you know, it drives me a little crazy. Having been in this industry for a long time, runtime type checking is just, it's a step back. We've lost 30 years of productivity when we're creating applications and we don't know whether we've made mistakes in our code. And look at that. I mean, we're sitting there trying to run this demo up on stage. We got this error, and we don't even know where it was in that application. Now, we've created great development tools. They have things like statement completion and error checking and all those kind of things. So I wanted to show you a pretty cool project we have underway that's really designed to address some of these things. So let's switch over to this other device and take a quick look at that. Now, I kind of started my career at Microsoft building developer tools, and one of the tools that I got to build was this great tool called Visual Studio. And what we're going to do is we're going to show you some new work that we've done in Visual Studio, since that comes up on the screen. And we've taken that JavaScript program that we just showed, and we've renamed it from .js to .ts. And that T stands for typing. What we've done is we've created an environment where we can take any JavaScript program, we can operate over it, and we've added one additional line up at the top, which is the type definitions for Node up on the server. And as you can see, everything looks good here. But the reason we have a bug is it turns out we've done something a little bit funny. Here in this function, we were expecting a string. So let's just add, very quickly, a type definition for a string. And the way we do that is we simply add :string to that. And now notice, here we go, back, bringing JavaScript into the year 2008. We've got squiggly underbars showing us that we have a syntax error that we can catch right now in the editor. And what it's saying is, hey, our message here, that thing really should be a string. So let's actually put this in double quotes, create a string here.
Should we say running?
Running, and now we have corrected the errors, and you can see that at runtime, we don't have to find that bug. We can find it right now while we're working. Now, that's just the simplest example. Let's do a little bit more complicated example. Let's take a look at the kind of thing that a typical JavaScript developer might start doing on the server. There's these rich libraries out there. In one of those cases, the library that we use is Express. And Express is a very powerful JavaScript library that gives us all kinds of functionality. And what we've done here is a very simple thing. We've got it running with two. We're not using all of Express, but we've got two little routes inside this. One which is going to display a welcome page, and one which is going to display account information. Now, if we go and we look at the page that's showing the welcome page, if Neil types out res dot, notice that we suddenly see the entire object model of JavaScript available to us. And let's go down to something like the redirect function, which is a new piece of capability that Node.js adds. All of a sudden, you can see the parameters, the way it works. As a developer, it just warms my heart to see all of this kind of stuff just popping back into this language, which is so powerful and is so ubiquitous. This really improves the productivity. Now, you might be thinking, John, that's great, but isn't this kind of defeating the purpose of JavaScript? Isn't one of the great things about JavaScript the ability to run on the client in the cloud and not have kind of runtimes that you have to use from Microsoft or somebody else? Well, here's the amazing thing. If Neil saves this file, he just does a save. What this produces is just absolutely plain JavaScript. So if he pulls this over here, let's look at the resulting JavaScript file that comes up. Can you pull that over? Or do we have a little, there you go. So after he hits save, you'll notice it's just completely generic JavaScript. So what we've done is we've created this great environment where no matter where you're running your JavaScript, you get the benefits of 30 years of software engineering. You make it available to your developers. You can start working on much bigger projects, and you don't get those runtime errors. Now, just to kind of prove this, I have something kind of fun I want to do. Let's actually run that actual JavaScript up on AWS. So this is a completely non-Microsoft stack. You know, we started with an Android app. Now we're running up here on AWS. We're running JavaScript. There's really no Microsoft in that stack at all. I hope our card keys continue to work when we get home. So what we've got here, we've got this thing up and running. And let's try the app. Let's even use Chrome to do it, just to prove that there's really, really nothing up our sleeves here. There you go. So that is JavaScript up on the server, running at AWS, and we've kind of put that together. Now let's just do something fun here. Let's go take a look at my account. And it's unauthorized. So if you think about the world of application development and the developers who are going out there to create these new next generation applications, you know, that is kind of a toy app. By the time, if you're inside an enterprise, you get done building that app, what are you going to have to go through? You're going to have to go through a security audit, and you're going to have to make sure that the thing can be monitored and updated. You're going to have to worry about maintenance on the application. And that simple JavaScript, by the time you add in the code to do the DDoS protection and all the other things, boy, that would get complicated. And then you start thinking about this across all the different projects that are going on inside your company and all of the different development environments that people are using these days. I mean, those services might be written in .NET. We've got this fantastic environment at Microsoft with ASP and a bunch of other technologies, and we do it there. We've got the great new Node.js capabilities. There's PHP. And these things might be running on AWS. They might be running at Google. They might be running at Salesforce or Office 365. And yet our job as IT pros, as people managing the applications, as developers, is somehow we have to stitch all that stuff together and keep it working. It can be a huge challenge. So the world really isn't as simple as we just showed. So what a lot of people do is they develop a new kind of service infrastructure to help isolate parts of the application and stitch it together through infrastructure and not necessarily in each individual piece of code. We call these things front doors. If you were to look behind the scenes at Yahoo, at Google, at Facebook, at Bing, all of these services often have a set of machines that are coming in and they're intercepting the requests coming into the applications. In fact, we've got a little diagram from a project we have here kind of showing that process. Clients over there making requests to those front doors, and then those requests being routed off to the other parts of the application. So Microsoft has a great set of technologies in this space. It's called ARR, Application Request Routing. And that's a very powerful set of technologies. We've actually got a nice project, it's all open source, called sg.coplex.com, where we've packaged all that up, and we can connect together services through this thing, easily create routes just through a nice, easy-to-use web interface. So here's what I want to do. I want to use that technique of application request routing, and I'm going to put a front door in front of our AWS web service. Now, this is a pretty interesting thing to do. We've actually configured that already, and you can see that we've got picshare.cloudapp.net, and that is routing us through that request router, and then it's turning around and it's forwarding it on to the EC2 AWS instance in order to do the actual request processing. Now, that application request routing is going to add two kind of unbelievable features. When I go click on my account, what it's going to do is it's going to notice that that was unauthorized, and it's going to route us over to one of the most powerful services that we offer up on Azure called Azure Active Directory. Azure Active Directory is the full power of Active Directory hosted in the cloud in a completely turnkey manner. And notice what Neil's doing is he's logging in that application. Notice we didn't change a line of code, and now we're logged in, we've done that interception in the cloud, and we've actually connected this together. So think about this. TypeScript, Node.js, putting that application up on AWS in Ubuntu, running in the cloud. We bring in this new application request routing. It's doing interception at the requests. It's seeing that the request isn't there. It's routing it over to Azure Active Directory to provide authorization into that application, and then it's forwarding it on to that application, all almost automatically. It's a really powerful thing. Now, the amazing thing about this service gateway and that kind of capability is that people around the industry, Salesforce, Dropbox, and many others are using Azure Active Directory as a key way to create applications to integrate into enterprises and to go make sure that their customers can continue to use the applications the way they want. So that's kind of the first quick set of demos that we had in mind. We wanted to show this world of devices and services all being stitched together in this new heterogeneous world of Salesforce, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, you name it, on services, and iOS, Android, different kinds of browsers on the other side. Now, of course, it wouldn't be complete without us kind of talking about some of the things that we're doing in our client. So I want to move on now to talk about some of the great things we've done inside of Windows to make it easy to build applications. So inside of Microsoft Windows, especially the new version 8.1, which was just announced, that technology contains APIs to enable developers, no matter what kind of development that they want to do. We wanted to make it very easy for them to build applications on Windows. So if you're a game developer, we have great low-level C, DirectX capabilities, but we've also announced things like Unity so that developers who are used to using these higher-level frameworks can go create their applications on Windows. We've also made it possible for people who are using .NET and managed languages like Java to easily create applications on Windows. But here's what I want to show. This, I think, is one of the most amazing things. We took a lot of effort and we put into Windows a new web control. And this web control can be used in any different kind of application. And what it did was it took that browser object model and it made it available to the developer in a very, very complete form. What this means is that developers can take their code, their web code, and most of the time they can simply drop it into a project and have it work. Now, we've been working with a lot of partners across the industry to do this, and they're pretty excited about the fact that they can create high-fidelity client applications using web technology on Windows 8. But we actually have done something here which is even a step further. We've taken that and we've wrapped it up in an easy-to-use system we call the Web App Framework. And let's actually do this pretty crazy thing. Let's literally take that URL for that app. We'll just drop it into the configuration. And literally, with that one change of code, let's hit F5 and see this thing now run. So there's that app that we had. Not a very simple app. Let's do the My Account. We've got things like integration with the navigation bars, with the charms. We've got the Active Directory running. But notice, this is a Windows Store app. You can pick this thing up from the store. It's integrated with all the navigation. There's no browser Chrome around this thing. It's easy to use. And in fact, we can really push this thing a long way. Just to give you an example of how far we can take this technology, let's take a look at a really cool website. It's called Flipboard. Flipboard has been one of the pioneers in using web technologies to create really compelling experiences around content. And they have all these kind of dynamically created magazines. Let's take a look at one of these things. You can see they do great layout. They also have cool things like page flip. Show the page flip here. This is all done in the web. You get great navigation through these applications. But notice, it's running inside the browser. Now let's do something pretty cool. Let's just go back to Visual Studio, and let's do that same trick. We'll take the URL over to Flipboard. So there's Flipboard. But we've also done a couple of other things. If you kind of scroll through this, you can see that we've added the app bar so you can navigate around on different parts of the Flipboard site. Nav bars, we've added notifications, and if things go to different places, we can intercept that. One of the other really cool things is this live tile. So one of the great features of a Windows 8 app or the Windows Phone is the ability to quickly convey information here. And what we've done is we've taken that live tile and we've looked at the RSS feed coming off of Flipboard, and we'll use that to update the live tile. So now let's run this app. This app now can do things like offline, the easy startup. We've even done some really cool stuff, like intercepting touch interfaces to provide a really great kind of experience. So let's go back to one of those magazines that we were looking at. And just to give you an idea, show there's the flip. But look at what happens if we just slide our finger over. Again, all stuff that's just coming kind of automatically out of these new capabilities that have been built into Windows. So I think it's a great example of where the device manufacturers, in this case Microsoft, can do work to make it much easier to create really compelling, really fantastic applications where things can be stitched together and create that overall experience that we wanted to deliver to our users, whether they're inside the enterprise, whether they're mass market customers like the folks that Flipboard are trying to target. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff we just shown. Now, I kind of have been talking about the first part of the application ecosystem. That's where we're targeting the world of devices and services. We're creating the applications. But as all of you know, a huge part of any application is the rest of it. The maintenance of the application, the understanding what's happening when our application is running out there. What are our users doing with our application? Really all the monitoring and metering and understanding all that kind of stuff. Well, I mentioned that the gateway and Windows Azure, in this case, can do a lot of that work for us. And what Neil is showing here is something pretty interesting. These are the logs that application gateway, these are the logs that Azure are producing. And let's take a look inside of some of the data here. As you can see, because we've got Azure Active Directory, we can see where we're going inside the application. We can see the particular user that's using that part of the application. We can see the organization based on the UPN, the company name that's using it. And I mean, we're just swimming in data. I mean, one of the great things about the new world that we live in is just data is everywhere. And that's fantastic because it means we can learn a lot. On the other hand, wow, is that a challenge to understand what's going on inside that data. If I were to look through this and try and understand what parts of my application are being used, it'd be tough. So all that data is sitting out there in Azure storage. It's sitting inside these things. And hold on, let's not go there yet. I just want to talk for a second about processing the data. We've done a great thing. We've taken open source technologies, Hadoop, Hive, and a bunch of other great things. We've packaged it up in this technology called HD Insight. HD Insight essentially gives us turnkey, high big data processing, high volume big data processing. So we took all of these logs, we did a very simple Hadoop query, took about 40 minutes to go run through this, and we packaged up and we analyzed that data and we organized it around which companies are looking at what kinds of things inside the application. Now the cool thing is, we didn't have to do anything. We didn't have to set up machines, we didn't have to configure them. We just literally streamed that data out of Azure storage, pumped it through Hadoop, and generated these new data sets. And now the question is, how do we go look at those data sets? And we actually have, we think, one of the best tools ever invented for looking at large data sets. It's a tool that a lot of people know and love. It's called Excel. So let's take a look at the results of that query inside of Excel. And what you can see here is you can see by time, by organization, the area of the application, and the number of requests. Now that's pretty interesting. We can see how many requests are going on, but you know what? There's a problem. If you're just looking at pure number of requests, you really don't know what's going inside your application because it really is dependent on the number of users. So here's another cool thing you can do in Excel. We've got another tab here where we've just loaded another data set from our ERP system, which is the mapping from different companies to the number of licensed seats that they happen to be using. And then we can take that data sitting in Excel and we can do a join on company. And so now we actually have this enhanced data set where we've stitched that together just using these ad hoc tools. This is just a matter of minutes where we can now see those requests normalized by the number of seats that they have. And that's pretty cool. That's really starting to get insight into what's going on. But where really the power shows up is another really amazing feature that we've got inside of Excel, which is this new capability. It's called Power Charts. So here, what we're looking at is that data pulled out of those logs, passed through Hadoop, filtered down, joined with other data, and now we can see usage of our application over time by customer, and we can see how people are using that. Now, where it really gets fun is this is interactive. So let's do this interesting thing. Let's go over there on the side, and let's just click on the analytics portion of this thing. And you can see if we go click on the various parts of the analytics, this fascinating piece of data pops out of the data analysis. As you can see, in that huge ream of data, which would just be impossible to look at, we suddenly notice this interesting thing, which is that only 3 of the customers are making use of the analytics portion of the website. I mean, this kind of insight is what we use to go figure out, oh, maybe that's an area that we need to do a better job marketing. Maybe that's an area where only our advanced customers, we might be able to monetize them better. So I think we're kind of getting close to the end of the demo sequence. We've described, I think, a pretty different view of Microsoft than I think a lot of people have. It's not just all about Windows. It's not just all about Azure. It's about living in this world of multiple devices, multiple services, bringing them together throughout the entire application lifecycle. Everything from the development side, through the metering and monitoring, through the integration with other services, up into the analytics and insight, all the way into the kinds of things that the marketing teams and the CEXOs are doing in Excel to understand our business. So it gives us a view over the kinds of ways that we think we can help in this new world of devices and services. So, thank you. So what I'd like to do is, I'm happy to keep going for a little bit longer, but I think this is actually a great time to kind of open it up for some questions, just to make sure people can understand kind of what we've done and where we've gone. So with that, we're gonna reach out to the audience and pass around mics if people have questions on what we've shown.
Well, you can see their eyes are bright and wide and shiny, and the slides are being photographed. So we're engaging. A hand, please. A Friday morning hand. There should be some sort of incentive. Come on, keep encouraging them, John. It's just a question. I'm not spotting the person who needs to ask you something.
Well, let me ask a question.
Wait.
Oh,
we found one
back there.
One. Thank you for your help, sir. Matt is pointing vigorously. I told you, I'm not just stupid and ugly, but I'm also rather blind.
Does the JT typed JavaScript, is this just for type checking and analysis, or can it run in full check mode?
It is a design time capability. So it is looking at the source files, it's adding type information into that, and then it does type checking over that. In addition, it does one kind of more advanced kind of feature, which is that it provides a consistent way to handle some of the more advanced, higher level characteristics like modules, so that the developer can focus on that higher level abstraction instead of having to worry about the differences between what runs on the client and what runs on the server. So if you're a sophisticated JavaScript programmer and you understand the way modules work, there's kind of a stylized way you write your JavaScript to make it a little more, say, object-oriented. And what we've done is we've packaged that up in a way that makes it easy for people to see what's going on. But all at compile time, all at the design time, what's put out, what's saved is just a 100% pure JavaScript file, and that's why we were able to run it up on AWS in Ubuntu, no Microsoft stack around.
Well, I may surprise you with the direction here, because I'm thinking more from a testing standpoint on the JavaScript, because I'm going to say maybe you didn't go far enough.
Because that's fair.
In JavaScript, it's common to take the data and turn it into code switching.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm wondering if there's been any thought of taking it and having a running engine just to run in the test lab to run it in checked mode, because there are lots of exceptions that can occur at runtime that a static analysis won't reveal.
You know those Ginsu knives where there's always one more thing? I have one more thing for you. So the great thing about the TypeScript project, it's all open source. And the actual TypeScript system is written in TypeScript. And that's
but TypeScript doesn't run.
Hold on, let me just finish. This is where it gets really cool. Because it's written in TypeScript, guess what it produces? Pure JavaScript. That pure JavaScript can now be run anywhere at runtime. So you could take that code that you're getting down over the wire, you can then pass it to the TypeScript compilation system at runtime, confirm that it's all good.
I'm gazing down the rabbit hole. Yes.
Nice job.
I'm getting the picture.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Great
so
question.
it's really a cool project. I don't know if you folks know Anders Heilsberg and Steve Luco. They're pretty awesome developers. Anders Heilsberg is the guy who invented Turbo Pascal years and years ago. He's been working on this. I think it's really, I have to say, when I develop code, there's nothing more fun than working in TypeScript and in JavaScript. So I encourage you to go take a look at it. And again, there's nothing that prevents you from using this thing in any project. And we really think it's a way to transform JavaScript from a language that's great for clients into broad-scale development, common language across clients and servers. Yep.
Hi. I wanted to ask about the Excel visualization stuff you showed at the end. I was at Hadoop Summit earlier in the year, and there was another Microsoft speaker who talked about using Excel as a way to explore the results of big data analytics.
It's exactly what we're showing.
Yeah, and the thing that strikes me as weird about this, and I want to ask you specifically about where you're going with the Power View. if you know anybody who was an accountant before VisiCalc, right? It was columns and rows on pieces of paper that looked kind of like customized pieces of graph paper. Excel and VisiCalc kind of look like that, but then take it another step further. Since there's not enough data scientists in the world, we need to be able to have some way to have the output of Hadoop jobs be accessible to a larger audience, or else we're going to have a bottleneck in skills, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And while Excel might seem like a logical extension of that, it's a different problem than Excel solves, just like when we made this jump from ledgers to spreadsheets. Now we need to make this jump from spreadsheets to something else. And while it might look a little bit like Excel, where it might have columns and rows and formulas, it's probably not going to be exactly Excel, right? So what you showed with Power View, 1 billion people don't know how to use that. 1 billion people know how to use the columns and rows, just like several million people in the accounting world used to know how to use those ledgers. So how do you see that with, how is that Power View going to evolve, and what's the plan on educating enough people to figure out how to use it so that we make this jump to a next generation of analytics tools now that we have all this data we didn't have before?
So you're spot on. This is not your grandfather's Excel, right?
Well, it was my great aunt, actually.
Great aunt's Excel. This is an evolved new set of capabilities that shares some of the intuitions from a user interface standpoint, but you're totally right. Power View is not the same as just storing a bunch of numbers and having some formulas. I mean, there's actually some really incredible technology. One of the code names that we have for the compression and the analytic capability inside of this is this thing called VertiPack, which allows Excel to be able to handle and stream over the wire these huge data sets and get them down to the point where they can be used interactively. And that is kind of one of the new, I mean, if you think about it, deep down inside of Excel, there's new engines that have been created to be able to handle these large data sets. So just to keep going with the analogy, there are, as we build out Excel, what we're adding with Power View and Power Chart are interfaces and experiences that build on people's existing skill set, but add new and fairly sophisticated additional capabilities into that tool set, and they need training on it.
Right, but at that point, does it cease to be Excel and become something else? I mean, obviously from a brand perspective, you guys want to, I mean, everybody in the world knows what Excel is, and by adding a feature to Excel called Power View, which really is kind of this totally separate thing, I mean, well, you see where I'm going with that.
I totally get it. Yes, you're right. It's a new product. It's a new set of capabilities. It's an evolved version of Excel. But just in fairness, one of the things that you get out of this is you can still do everything that you used to do in Excel against the results. Those tables, the results that come back, you can still use the same formulas in them. You can still integrate them with existing parts of the application. What we've done is we've added new ways to bring data into that environment and operate on it in very sophisticated ways. I think it's the evolution of Excel. It's not the same Excel, and it's arguably one of the most exciting things that we're doing on that side of the house. So I think you're spot on with all your comments. Yep.
Oh. Hi, John. Nice talk. I have a question regarding the MDM, the BYOD part. So the tools you just, the framework, or say you just introduced, is that going to help like third-party vendor for the MDM, BYOD, along with all these big data analytics?
So just to make sure I got the question, I'll try and repeat it and you tell me if I got it right.
Sure.
So we just showed creating applications on different devices like Android and so on. In order to really manage those devices in this new world of bring your own device, we need to have integration with MDMs and other aspects of enterprise management that today aren't as unified as people would like. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. Since I noticed that Microsoft itself has a bunch of stuff like Active Directory or the Intunes, but on the other hand, all other third-party vendors also has their own stuff. So people may need to choose between all these stuff. So is that
here's the great news on that particular front. I think that there's broad recognition across all of the device vendors, from Apple to Samsung to Microsoft to many others, that device management is an increasingly important capability that people need to add to the BYOD scenarios. I mean, just look at what was happening with Apple down in LA in the educational market. Look at the great work that Samsung's doing around adding the ability to have a space on their device for work and a space on their device for personal information and keeping those things separated, and then integrating into cloud management systems. So as that work has been going on, there's actually a degree of convergence that's occurring between not only the device vendors, but the cloud management vendors. And so there's the ODM standards and others that are starting to converge. We're certainly supporting that. And I think it's pretty exciting to see what's happened across the Windows platform to enable not just Microsoft to manage them, but lots of third parties to manage them. And the other direction, for our service to be able to manage devices from lots of different vendors. You also mentioned things like Active Directory. Active Directory has been a great tool for enterprises in those cases where the enterprise owns the device. When you get into the BYOD world, it starts to become a little funny for the IT department to reach out and, for example, wipe out your machine in its entirety, because you have a lot of personal data on there and maybe you bought that machine. So moving to this new world of BYOD where you can designate sub-regions of the device so that just the corporate data or the organizational or the governmental data can be independently wiped out and managed when the device gets lost. That's a pretty key new capability that many of the device vendors are building.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Great questions, audience. There is time for one more, if somebody's got their hand available.
And maybe we could go to the last slide.
This will reveal all.
Let's see. And I'll go back one. There we go. So I just want to make a couple of quick comments. Matt is coming up afterward, and he's going to be going in depth onto Windows Azure. It's a fantastically deep set of capabilities across IaaS and PaaS. .NET is a huge part of the equation, but we're supporting things like the announcement of Java with Oracle. Azure's really evolved into a fantastic platform, particularly for companies doing businesses. Everything I showed in this demo is based on shipping, running code. There is no magic here. Everything, this is stuff you can do today. Windows Azure Mobile Services, that's there right now. So if you go to developer.microsoft.com, you can learn about all those things. Azure Mobile Services, how we target heterogeneous clients, links off to the TypeScript technologies, the HD Insight, that new Windows 8 web control, that's all out there. Now, my team has the great pleasure of working with many developers across the industry to go create these next generation apps. And as we go do that, we get to go talk about it. And so in this particular case, we took a bunch of the things that we've been doing with folks like Khan Academy and Flipboard and many others, and we've been creating some summary and some code and some frameworks and some patterns and some best practices around how to go create those next generation cross-device, cross-service applications. So all the code that you just saw is going to be available up at Pickshare, and it's going to have links that you can go to go find out about more of these things. So this is a great place to go learn more about this kind of new world. And with that, I think, do we have time for one more question?
We absolutely do. It will require a hand, and that's the only prerequisite.
Okay.
And then it requires I see that hand, but luckily I've got these magic helpers.
Okay.
I think that I'm afraid you've rather overwhelmed them, if I may say so, John. There's an awful lot to digest there. I think the two words on your slide we should focus on. Why don't we thank John Shewchuk in the time-honored fashion for an amazing... I love the real-time conversion.